Hi, my name is Justin and I'm with Ascend Finance. Today, we're going to cover Chapter 13 bankruptcy in Connecticut. What percentage of Chapter 13 bankruptcies do you think end successfully? What I mean is actually get you out of the debt. Only 38.8%. Why? It's often related to cost and many other variables. So here's what we'll cover in today's video. First, a quick Chapter 13 bankruptcy introduction. Second, your monthly Chapter 13 plan payment. Third, any Chapter 13 bankruptcy costs, specifically in Connecticut. Fourth, the Chapter 13 bankruptcy process in Connecticut. Fifth, Chapter 13 bankruptcy pros and cons. And finally, alternatives to Chapter 13 bankruptcy. Before we begin and I go any further here, please understand that Chapter 13 bankruptcy in Connecticut can be complex. Most often it is. So feel free to ask us any questions or comment below, and we will do our best to respond as quickly as possible. Also, please like the video if you enjoy it, as those are always encouraging to me. Now, let's cover a quick introduction. So, number one, what is Chapter 13 bankruptcy? Chapter 13 bankruptcy is known as a wage earner's plan. That's because it allows individuals with a regular income to pay back some or all of their debts. The Chapter 13 bankruptcy plan is a monthly payment, often on a 3 or 5 year plan. People like Chapter 13 because it can stop wage garnishment, stop foreclosure, and actually provide you legal protection from your creditors. One of the most important things to understand is the affordability of a Chapter 13 monthly plan payment in a Chapter 13 bankruptcy in Connecticut. Basically, how much you have to pay each month and how many years are going to be in the plan, right? So the reason that your Chapter 13 plan payment is so important is that it actually may be more expensive than your current debt obligations. So with all that being said, it also could still be less. So it really depends, and it's good to kind of understand all of the pieces involved. We got this question of what their Chapter 13 payment would be so much, we actually built this free Chapter 13 bankruptcy calculator based on all the actual bankruptcy forms, and you can estimate your Chapter 13 bankruptcy plan payment based on your specific zip code and using our Connecticut Chapter 13 calculator located in the description below, which you can check out there. Now, let's discuss how the Chapter 13 plan payment actually works in Connecticut, all the various costs and fees, the Chapter 13 bankruptcy process in Connecticut, pros and cons, and some alternatives to look into. So, your Chapter 13 plan payment. There are various factors of what goes into your Chapter 13 plan payment. So let's go through 4 right here. So, first, disposable income. The amount of income you have each month after subtracting allowable payroll deductions, allowable living expenses from your gross monthly income, that's what's going to help calculate your disposable income. Now, big question is, how do I know what the standards are? So you can actually access on the government's means testing website, you can find the local standards for Connecticut for housing, utilities, and transportations to give you an idea. You can always use our calculator below. That'll help you estimate it as well. Nevertheless, assets. So in some cases, the value of your assets could increase what your monthly Chapter 13 plan will be. So what I mean is if your asset has a large amount of non-exempt equity, then it may increase your plan. For example, to make it a little more understandable, if your home has a great deal of equity that is above the Connecticut bankruptcy exemptions, your Chapter 13 plan could be much higher. Just something to know. Next, debts. So some debts must be paid in full through 13. Those are generally going to be the priority unsecured debts, like taxes, alimony, child support, administrative costs, right? Anything attributed to that. Now, other creditors that are attached to more unsecured debt, like medical bills, personal loans, credit card debt, those may actually receive partial payments. Also, just something to note, Chapter 13 plans typically include back mortgage payments and car loan payments. Finally, recent financial transactions. So those are big. So sometimes recent financial transactions could actually impact your Chapter 13 plan. So if you end up speaking with a bankruptcy attorney, that's something definitely to consider. Duration is also important to consider when you're thinking about doing a Chapter 13 bankruptcy specifically. Is one of the main questions is, are you eligible for 3 or 5 years? So your average monthly income compared to the Connecticut median income guideline is actually what is used to help determine whether you're going to be on a 3 or 5 year Chapter 13 plan. Now, you can check out the below in the description. I'm going to add the median income guidelines for Connecticut, but you can also check a look here. These are all the median income guidelines for Connecticut for cases filed after May 15th, 2021. But you can take our calculator or check the government's means testing website for up-to-date data, as it generally changes every 6 months. Third, so the Chapter 13 bankruptcy fees in Connecticut. So I want to go through all those. The main fees to consider in a Connecticut bankruptcy is the Chapter 13 bankruptcy attorney fee, trustee fees, filing fees, bankruptcy courses, and any miscellaneous costs attached. The Chapter 13 calculator that you can access, as I stated below, will account for all those fees, but let's just go through the fees one by one here, okay? So number one, attorney fees. The Chapter 13 bankruptcy attorney fee in Connecticut is estimated to be around $3,000. The fee may depend on district, however, so a Chapter 13 attorney fee may be different in New Haven compared to Stamford, so it really depends on the district. Trustee fees for Chapter 13. Another cost is the Chapter 13 trustee fees. Like I said, a Chapter 13 bankruptcy is often 3 or 5 years. So there are many administrative tasks for a Chapter 13 bankruptcy trustee. So just something to consider. Here's a breakdown of the Connecticut Chapter 13 bankruptcy trustees. Trustee fees, generally around 7.3%. But just as a reference, this can sometimes result in thousands of dollars paid to the trustee. Filing fees. So not as expensive as potentially the attorney fees. This is just the bankruptcy filing fee. It's generally around $313. The fee is paid directly to the bankruptcy court. This is a national fee, not specific to Connecticut. As you can tell, there are miscellaneous fees such as bankruptcy courses and getting to court as well, but I'll touch on more later. So let's now cover the Chapter 13 bankruptcy process. The process is important to understanding when filing bankruptcy. So here are some questions to consider in the process to file. First, understand the different types of bankruptcies. So most folks will file a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, but it's important to know the differences. Chapter 7 is often cheaper and provides faster debt relief, but each has its own pros and cons. Second, understand which debts will be eliminated. Many unsecured debts are eliminated in a Chapter 13, but it's good to understand which ones are and which are not. Third, estimate your Chapter 13 bankruptcy plan payment. It's good to get an idea of what your 13 could look like for you specifically. 4, understand alternatives to filing Chapter 13 bankruptcy. The main alternatives to Chapter 13 bankruptcy are Chapter 7, debt settlement, debt management, and debt payoff planning. 5, determine whether to hire a Chapter 13 bankruptcy attorney to file bankruptcy. 6, take a credit counseling course. 7, file bankruptcy petition and other forms. 8, a Chapter 13 bankruptcy trustee is assigned to your bankruptcy filing. 9, attend the Chapter 13 bankruptcy court meetings. 10, take a second mandatory debt education course. 11, continue to make your Chapter 13 monthly plan payments. And 12, you'll receive your bankruptcy discharge. As you can see, there's a whole slew of steps in the process, but some of the processes are just understanding whether you'd like to file bankruptcy or not. The 5th, let's go over the Chapter 13 bankruptcy pros and cons. We'll first cover the pros, excuse me. First pro is it can prevent foreclosure so that you can keep your home by catching up with the past due mortgage payments over 3 to 5 years. Another pro, it can stop wage garnishments, seizures, levies, or any debt collection lawsuits. Pro, it can stop creditor harassment. Another pro, it can stop wage garnishments I was saying before. You may also get a discharge on a second mortgage through a Chapter 13. Another pro, you may be able to pay less than what you owe to satisfy the secured lien on your vehicle. Another pro, catch up on past due child support and alimony. Another pro could be getting rid of unsecured debts for pennies on the dollar. You may be able to resolve tax debts and IRS problems. And finally, another pro would be that you can protect property from being sold to pay the debts. Now, let's cover the downsides. One con is the cost of the Chapter 13 bankruptcy can sometimes be expensive. And it's often 3 or 5 years. It can have a negative impact on your credit score, and it can reflect negatively on your credit report as well. 2 other cons are, first, low payment flexibility. It may have a difficulty variability of what your payment would look like. And finally, your monthly plan payment can increase if your income increases. Now we have an idea of the pros and cons. I want to jump into Chapter 13 bankruptcy alternatives. So now let's cover the common Chapter 13 bankruptcy alternatives in this video here. So first, let's cover Chapter 7 bankruptcy. So Chapter 7 bankruptcy is often the least expensive option and the fastest form of debt relief. You can get rid of debt relief in as little as 120 days, and there's no Chapter 13 trustee, and the attorney fees are also a lot less expensive because the cases are less complex. Many people file Chapter 7 when they qualify and are not at risk of losing any belongings in the bankruptcy. Second, let's cover debt settlement. So debt settlement is where a company or you negotiate and settle debt with your creditors. The goal is to reduce the payment burden of all your debt by around 50%, which will help lower your monthly payment, thus providing debt relief. There are definitely pros and cons of debt settlement, so definitely do your research. Third, let's cover debt management. Debt management is often where a nonprofit credit counseling agency negotiates the interest rate on your current debt. They may negotiate a high interest credit card on a 25% interest rate down to 9%. The goal is to reduce your monthly payment. You may also be on a 3 or 5 year payment plan. I hope this video has been helpful in your understanding of filing a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. You can visit the Chapter 13 bankruptcy calculator below to estimate your planned payment. Did you learn anything, something new from this video? Please click the subscribe button, as we're going to put more and more videos out to hopefully help you make the most informed decision. Now, I'd like to turn it over to you. What are some questions you have about filing Chapter 13 bankruptcy? Please comment below, and I'll do my best to respond as quickly as possible. Thanks for watching.